What if the stack of old dishes shoved to the back of your cabinet? The ones your daughter already called outdated and your son already volunteered to haul to the curb is quietly worth more than the television in your living room. 10 sets of old dishes and bowls have sold for hundreds, some for thousands, and the one pattern nearly every American family owns without realizing its value is waiting at number 1. Turn nothing over to anyone until we get there. Here is the truth. The donation bin is counting on you never learning. Dishes fool people more completely than almost any other category of antique, and the reason is embarrassingly simple. You eat off them. You stack them. You wash them. An object you have used 1,000 times stops looking like an object at all. It becomes background. It becomes the thing you grab when company comes and shove back in the cabinet when they leave. And that invisibility is exactly what has kept real money sitting on your shelf for 30, 40, sometimes 60 years. I have watched the genuinely valuable piece, the one with the right mark and the right date, go into a box lot for $3 because nobody turned it over. Tonight, that stops. 4 things decide whether your dish is worth $10 or $10,000, the maker, the pattern, the condition, and whether the set is still together. Everything else is decoration. Flow, blue, china. If you have ever picked up an old blue and white dish and thought the pattern looked smeared, blurry, slightly out of focus, like someone printed it and left it in the rain, you were not looking at a damaged piece. You were looking at Flow Blue, and the blur is the point. Flow Blue was made that way intentionally. English potters in the 1840s discovered that by adding certain chemicals to the kiln during firing, they could make the cobalt blue decoration bleed softly into the white body of the piece. It looked romantic. It looked painterly. It looked like something that cost more than it did, which is always good for business. Staffordshire Potteries made it by the shipload and sent it straight to America. Now, here is the honest part. Because it was made in enormous quantities, most of it is not worth a great deal. A common Flow blue plate runs $20 to $40, and I will not pretend otherwise. But certain combinations are doing very heavy lifting. A rare Flow Blue platter in the Amoy pattern by Davenport has sold for over $400. Soup tureens with their lids intact have crossed 1,000. The lids are always where the money disappears first because lids break and nobody saves them. Your test is 2 parts. Turn it over and find the pattern name. Amoy, cinder, cashmere. Each one is searchable. Then check the country mark. England with no made in front of it means pre-1914. That blur is not damage. It is the signature. It is the whole reason the collector wants it. Majolica. I'm going to ask you to set aside everything your eye is telling you right now, because majolica is the category where good taste is actively working against you. Majolica is heavy. It is loud. It is shaped like vegetables and fish and overlapping fern leaves and things that have no business being a plate. It comes in greens and yellows and turquoise and a shade of brown that could generously be described as swamp. Your instinct when you see it is probably to assume it belongs at a carnival, and that instinct has been putting real money in other people's pockets for decades. Here is what majolica actually is. In 1851, an English potter named Leon Arnoux at Minton looked at Italian Renaissance earthenware and decided to revive it for the Victorian market. He called it majolica, named loosely after the island of Majorca, which was a trading hub for that early Italian ware. It became the must-have decorative pottery of the Victorian era. Minton, George Jones, Wedgwood, and dozens of American makers like Griffin Smith and Hill all produced it, and the best examples were made by hand with real artistry behind every leaf and ribbon and lobster claw. A George Jones majolica sardine box, complete with its fish-shaped lid, sold at auction for over $3,000. A Minton strawberry dish in the right condition has brought $1,200. And here is the piece hiding in the most estates, the oyster plate. Those circular dishes with the little curved pockets shaped to hold individual oysters. A rare George Jones oyster plate has sold for close to $2,000. Your test is simple and takes 30 seconds. Turn it over. A piece marked Minton or George Jones or Griffin Smith and Hill is in a completely different conversation from an unmarked piece. Then look at the glaze. On the great majolica, the color is dense and jewel-like and the modeling underneath is crisp. On the common stuff, the color looks thin and the relief work is soft and rounded. Crisp modeling plus a known maker's mark is where the money is. And yes, I know it looks like something your uncle would win at a ring toss. Look closer. Haviland Limoges. This is the one your grandmother called her good dishes. The ones that only came out at Thanksgiving and Christmas and maybe the one time the pastor came to dinner. The ones with the small delicate flowers and the gold rim and the word Limoges on the bottom, which she said in a way that meant you were not to touch them. She was not wrong to be careful. She may have been wrong about exactly how careful. Here's the honest truth about Limoges that most people never hear. Limoges is a city in France, not a maker. It is a region, the way Champagne is a region. Dozens of factories operated in Limoges over the past century and a half, and they did not all produce work of equal quality or equal value. The word Limoges on the bottom tells you where it was made. The name above or below it tells you who made it, and that name is doing all the work. The house that matters most in American estates is Haviland. Theodore Haviland and his brother David Haviland set up in Limoges specifically to make china for the American market, and they did it at a level that put them in the White House, literally. Haviland produced official state china for multiple American presidents, including Abraham Lincoln and Rutherford Hayes. A complete Haviland dinner service in a desirable pattern has sold at auction for over $6,000. Even individual Haviland serving pieces in excellent condition regularly bring $200 to $500. Your test tonight is to read every word on the back stamp carefully. Look for Haviland & Co. or Theodore Haviland. Then look for the patent name or number, because Haviland made over 30,000 patents and certain ones carry a real premium over others. The pink rose patterns are common. The hand-painted game bird pieces are not. Condition on Haviland is everything. One crazing crack across the glaze and you have a decorative piece. A perfect surface and you have a saleable one. Separate the serving pieces first. The serving pieces are almost always worth more individually than the per plate price of the lot. Separate them before anyone else does. Buffalo china. This one is going to surprise you, not because it is the most expensive thing on this list. It is not. But because the thing you least expect to be collectible turns out to be exactly what a very loyal group of collectors will quietly pay for all day long. Buffalo china is restaurant ware. It is thick. It is heavy. It is the plate your scrambled eggs came on at a diner in 1953. It has no flowers and no gold rim and no claim to being anything other than completely, aggressively functional. If Haviland is the china your grandmother would not let you touch, Buffalo china is the kind you could drop on a tile floor and it would probably chip the floor. The Buffalo China Company, founded in Buffalo, New York in 1899, and they made vitrified china, which is a type of extremely dense, non-porous ceramic specifically engineered to survive commercial kitchens. It is so durable that pieces from the 1920s and 30s are often found in near-perfect condition because the material simply refuses to break down. Here is what collectors are actually chasing. Custom pieces. Railroads, ocean liners, hotels, diners, and restaurants commissioned Buffalo china with their own logos and crests fired right into the glaze. A plate from the Fred Harvey Railroad restaurant chain has sold for over $200. A piece from a famous defunct hotel can bring $300 to $400, and certain pieces made for the dining cars of specific train lines are approaching $800 among railroad memorabilia collectors. Your test is the back stamp, plus the logo on the front. If there is a crest, a train logo, a hotel name, or a diner name on the face of the piece, look it up before you price it at $1. Then check the back stamp for Buffalo china plus a date. The company impressed date codes into many pieces, and a pre-1940 piece in perfect vitrified condition is worth significantly more than a later one. Nobody ever saved these on purpose. That is why the ones that survived are worth finding. Rookwood pottery. I want you to picture a bowl, not a fancy bowl. A matte brown bowl with a slightly uneven glaze, maybe a painted flower on the side that looks like it was done quickly, a small flame mark on the base, and a date cipher that means nothing to you. The kind of bowl that sits in an attic in a cardboard box next to old curtains and gets called miscellaneous. That bowl might be Rookwood, and Rookwood changes the conversation entirely. The Rookwood Pottery Company was founded in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1880 by Maria Longworth Nichols, and for a period in the late 1800s it was considered the finest art pottery produced in America. Their artists, real named artists who signed their work, decorated each piece individually. They painted irises and ravens and portraits and landscapes onto the clay surface before it was glazed and fired, and the results were closer to painting than pottery. In 1900, Rookwood pottery won the Grand Prix at the Paris Exposition. That is not a small thing. That is the World's Fair. They beat the European houses on their own ground. A Rookwood vase painted by a major artist like Matthew Daly or Kotaro Shiraya Madani has sold at auction for over $50,000. Even more modest pieces by lesser-known decorators regularly sell in the $500 to $3,000 range. Your test is on the base, and it is a puzzle worth solving. Rookwood used a cipher system for dates. The letters RP with flames above it appeared from 1886 onward. Each additional flame represents 1 year after that. Then from 1886 they switched to Roman numerals pressed into the clay. So the Roman numeral 6 means 1896. The shape number, the artist's initials, and the clay body marks are all there too if you know to look. A free Rookwood database online will decode every mark on the base in about 2 minutes. And the artist's initials. Please do not skip the artist's initials. A signed piece by a known decorator is a different object entirely from an unsigned one. The honest truth about what separates a $5 dish from a $500 one. Now, before we get to the top 5, I need to say something that I think about every time I watch a family clear out a house. Every single piece we have talked about so far, the blurry blue dish, the loud majolica oyster plate, the thick diner china, the quiet brown bowl, none of them look like money. That is not an accident. The pieces that end up at estate sales and thrift stores and donation bins are there precisely because their owners decided with their eyes that their object had no story worth keeping. And the eye is almost always making that decision in about 2 seconds. What actually decides value is not visible. It is a maker's mark pressed into clay, a pattern number fired under a glaze, an artist's initials scratched into a base, a date cipher that tells you this piece left a kiln in 1896 and has not broken in 130 years. Those things are learnable. They are not instinct and they are not luck. They are a system, and you can read it tonight at your own cabinet with a flashlight and a phone and a willingness to turn things upside down. That is exactly why I put together the Appraiser's Playbook, where I walk through the marks, the condition tells, the completeness checks, and the quiet signals that separate a $5 dish from a $500 one, written plainly so you can hold a piece and actually know what you are holding before anyone across the table gets to tell you what it is worth. The link is below if you want it. Now, back to the list, Blue Willow. This is the pattern so familiar it has practically become wallpaper. The little bridge, the 2 birds, the willow tree, the pagoda, the fence. You have seen it on plates and mugs and serving bowls your entire life, and familiarity has done what familiarity always does. It has made the whole thing invisible. Here is the thing about Blue Willow that most people get exactly backwards. Because it is the most recognized china pattern in the English-speaking world, most people assume the most recognized version is the most valuable. It is the least valuable. A mass-produced blue willow plate from a mid-century Japanese maker is worth $3 to $5, and there are approximately 40 million of them in American homes right now. Fame is not scarcity. The whole world already has one. The Blue Willow. Worth real money is the early English version, and the gap between the two is sitting right there in the back stamp if you know how to read it. The pattern was first produced by Thomas Minton around 1790, and it was taken up by Spode and later by dozens of Staffordshire potteries throughout the 1800s. An early Spode Blue Willow platter in excellent condition has sold for over $800. A Minton Blue Willow serving piece from the 1820s has brought over $1,200. Your test is a two-step one. First, read the back stamp. If it says made in Japan or made in England with the made in front of it, you are almost certainly looking at a 20th century piece worth very little. If it reads England with no made in, or if it carries a Spode or Minton or Wedgwood mark, you are in a different room entirely. Second, look at the transfer itself. On the early English pieces, it is richer, denser, almost inky. On the later mass-produced versions, it is thinner, and the detail in the willow branches and the fence posts is softer and less crisp. Every grandchild in America has looked at Blue Willow and thought ordinary. A handful of those plates are not ordinary at all. They just never told anyone. Red Wing pottery. Most people who grew up in the Midwest know the name. The big stoneware crocks, the salt glaze, the wings stamped into the side in red. They sat in the basement or the root cellar or on the back porch, and they held everything from sauerkraut to lard to flour to... Honestly, I do not want to know what your grandfather put in some of these. The Red Wing Stoneware Company was founded in Red Wing, Minnesota in 1877, and for several decades it produced the most widely distributed utilitarian stoneware in the American Midwest. The pieces were built to be used, not admired, and they were used hard, which is exactly why the ones that survived in clean, uncracked condition carry a premium. Here is where the money lives. The earliest pieces, made before 1900, often carried a simple oval stamp with a small wing. A 6-gallon crock from that period in excellent condition has sold for over $300. The decorated pieces, the ones with the hand-painted blue flowers and the cobalt accents, bring more. And the salt glaze advertising pieces, crocks commissioned by specific businesses with the business name stenciled or impressed into the side, are where collectors spend real money. A rare Red Wing advertising crock with a local merchant's name has sold at auction for over $1,000. Your test is the mark and the size number. Read the impressed or stamped mark on the base or the shoulder of the piece. Early marks without a union stamp are pre-1912. The size number tells you the gallon capacity, and the rarer sizes, particularly the very large and very small, bring premiums. Then look at the surface. A clean salt glaze with the original cobalt decoration intact and no chips to the rim is the combination that pays. One crack through the body and you have a planter. No cracks and the right mark, and you have a real piece of American stoneware history. Spode transferware. I will be honest with you about something. Spode transferware is not what most people would call beautiful. It is busy. It is blue and white, and it depicts pastoral English scenes and Italian landscapes and Indian flowers and hunting parties and things that look like they belong on the walls of a hunting lodge that has not been redecorated since 1840. Your family probably has a platter of it somewhere and has been politely ignoring it since the Reagan administration. Here's what polite ignorance has been costing you. Josiah Spode II perfected the blue and white transfer printing process around 1805, and for the next several decades, the factory in Stoke-on-Trent produced transferware at a quality level no one else in the trade could match. The depth of the blue, the sharpness of the engraved transfer, the quality of the bone china body underneath, all of it was a step above the competition, and serious collectors know it. A rare Spode blue and white platter in the tower pattern has sold for over $500. Certain discontinued Spode patterns like Camellia and Tiber and Blue Italian in very early examples have brought $800 to over $1,000. And the large serving pieces, the tureens, the sauce boats, the covered vegetable dishes always bring more per piece than the dinner plates, because the plates survived in enormous numbers and the serving pieces did not. Your test is a 3-part read of the back stamp. First, look for the Spode name spelled correctly, Spode. Then look for the pattern name, which Spode almost always included. Then look at whether the mark says England or Made in England. No made in means pre-1914 in almost every case, and pre-1914 Spode in excellent condition is in a genuinely different value tier. Run your finger across the transfer surface. On an early piece, you can feel the slightest texture where the transfer sits on the glaze. On a later reproduction, the surface is completely flat. Texture means age. Flat means later. The hunting lodge platter your family ignored might be the most valuable thing on the shelf. I have watched these leave estate sales for $8. $8. Whole pottery. This is the one that makes people emotional, and I understand why. Whole pottery is the pastel bowl on the windowsill. It is the little vase with the pink and blue roses that sat on your mother's dresser her entire adult life. It is the pitcher shaped like a magnolia blossom that you thought was a dollar store knockoff until about 30 seconds ago. The Hull Pottery Company operated in Crooksville, Ohio from 1905 until 1986, and their matte pastel artware line, introduced in the late 1930s, became one of the most beloved American pottery lines of the 20th century. The pieces look soft and romantic and slightly impractical, which is exactly what people wanted coming out of the Depression. They were affordable enough to actually buy and pretty enough to feel like a luxury. Here is where it becomes interesting. In 1950, the Hull factory flooded and then caught fire, destroying the original molds. When they rebuilt, the new pieces never quite matched the quality of the pre-1950 work, which means every piece made before that fire is from a run that cannot be extended. Fixed supply, forever. A pre-fire whole magnolia vase in pink and blue with no chips and original matte finish has sold for over $300. A Little Red Riding Hood cookie jar, part of Hull's most famous novelty line, has brought over 1,000 at auction, and a rare Hull Sueño tulip piece in excellent condition has cost $500. Your test is the mold number impressed into the base. Hull marked almost every piece with a mold number and a size designation. A reference like H19 or W6 or similar combinations identify the specific piece and pattern. A free Hull pottery database will tell you exactly which line you're holding and what the current collector market looks like for it in about 90 seconds. Then check the finish. Pre-fire Hull has a true matte surface that feels almost chalky under your fingertip. Post-fire Hull has a slightly glossier surface, even on the pieces marketed as matte. And the Little Red Riding Hood pieces. If you have any of the Little Red Riding Hood pieces, any of them at all, do not put them in a box until you have looked up every single one. The cookie jar gets the attention, but the salt and pepper shakers, the teapot, the butter dish, all of them carry real value, and most people do not know the line extended that far. Depression era Fiestaware. And here we are, the #1 most likely piece of genuinely valuable dishware sitting in American homes right now, and it is the thing you've been eating off since childhood without once suspecting it. Fiestaware, the bright solid-colored dishes, red and yellow and cobalt blue and green and ivory, the rings on the rim, the solid glazed body, the kind of dishes that went in the dishwasher 10,000 times and came out looking exactly the same because Homer Laughlin built them that way on purpose. The Homer Laughlin China Company introduced Fiesta in 1936, designed by Frederick Riad, a British art director who had studied under some of the great names in European ceramics. The line was meant to bring modernist design to the American table at a price a Depression-era family could actually pay. It worked beyond anything the company anticipated. Fiesta became one of the most successful dinnerware lines in American history. Now, here is the thing that most people get wrong, and it costs them every time. Modern Fiesta is still being made. Homer Laughlin reintroduced the line in 1986, and it never stopped. A brand new Fiesta dinner plate costs about $10 at a department store, and it looks almost identical to the vintage one. Almost. The vintage Fiesta worth real money is the original run from 1936 to 1973, and within that run, one color above all others changes the entire conversation. Red. Original Fiesta Red, which Homer Laughlin called radioactive red, and I am not using that word for drama. The original red glaze was made with uranium oxide. Actual uranium, the same uranium that glows under a black light, the same uranium the government asked Homer Laughlin to stop using during World War II because the uranium was needed for the Manhattan Project. They stopped making red Fiesta in 1943 and did not bring it back until 1959, and when they did bring it back, the formula was different. An original pre-war Fiesta red serving bowl in excellent condition has sold for over $200. A complete original red Fiesta place setting has brought over $400. And a rare original red Fiesta disc water pitcher, the big round one that looks like a flying saucer on a stick, has crossed $800 at auction. But red is not the only color worth checking. Medium green, which was only produced from 1959 to 1969, is the rarest color in the vintage lineup. A medium green Fiesta casserole dish has sold for over $1,000. A medium green Fiesta teapot has brought close to $900. Your test is a 4-part one, and it is the most important test on this entire list because the fakes and the later versions are everywhere. First, look at the base. Vintage Fiesta has an indented ring on the base. The modern reproduction has a smoother base without that same indented ring profile. Second, read the mark. Vintage pieces say either Fiesta with a small HLC stamp or genuine Fiesta. The modern pieces say Fiesta with made in USA. Third, if you have a red piece, take it to a dark room and hold a black light on it. Original uranium red glows. The post-war red formula does not. Fourth, look at the rings on the rim. Vintage rings are sharper and more defined. Later rings are softer. And before you say your dishes are just the common yellow ones, check the bottoms of every single piece anyway. Sets get mixed over decades. One medium green casserole lid in a cabinet full of yellow is still a casserole lid worth looking up tonight. Here is the honest reframe, and it is the same one every item on this list has been walking you toward. The value was never in how bright the color is, or how familiar the shape is, or how many times you have put it through a wash cycle. The value is in the mark, the date, the color code, and whether the piece is whole and unchipped. A medium green Fiesta teapot with a chip on the spout is a display piece. A medium green Fiesta teapot with no damage is a collector's object. That distance from display piece to collector's object is decided by condition and condition alone. Do not carry a single box to the curb before you turn every dish over and read the base. Not one. The mark on the bottom is not decoration. It is a signed and dated confession, telling you exactly what it is, who made it, and when. Most people flip a dish, see a jumble of symbols, and set it right back down. That jumble is a salary. You just did not know how to read it yet. Every dish, every bowl, every platter and tureen lid. Turn it over. Read the maker's name. Spend 60 seconds with a search. That is the whole habit, and it is the only thing standing between you and a very expensive mistake. Tap the like button if this sent you straight to your cabinet. Tell me in the comments what is written on the bottom of the oldest dish in your house, and do not sell a single piece until you have read it. Go turn it over.